Hey guys, I'm not even gonna beat around the bush today. This story legitimately almost broke me, and if you're squeamish, you may want to proceed with caution, or at the very least prepare yourself, because this was not easy to cover.
Child Protective Services forces couple to have C-section to kidnap baby after falsely accusing them of terrorism. The headline alone is absolutely blood-boiling. A mother is made to undergo a potentially life-threatening surgery against her will to deliver a child who might not even survive the procedure, only for said newborn child to simply be kidnapped by the state immediately? What the hell? If you're a thinking person, you might be asking if there's another side to this. Maybe as presented, the story is overly sensationalized. Sure, it looks bad, but it must be missing some very important context that justifies CPS's actions, right? Well, I'll spare you the posturing. There isn't. In fact, it's only the beginning.
Just seriously take that in for a moment. A story in the United States where a headline describes a woman being kidnapped by CPS workers, taken to a hospital, drugged against her will, and forced to have an abortion. The baby then survives and is kidnapped by the said CPS workers to be put into a foster home. And the story actually gets worse as you continue to read the report.
So the protagonists of our story are Susie and Peter Saad. Susie is a native-born American, while Peter's family are Egyptian Coptic Christians, moved to the US when he was a child. He is an American citizen. The two met in medical school and both have master's degrees and have 2 kids. They were living in New Jersey at the time. Susie got pregnant a 3rd time and was set to deliver a daughter. However, she didn't like the quality of service she was getting in her home state. She instead opted to go on vacation to Maine, where she was recommended a better hospital. On the drive there, Susie experienced anxiety and back pains. Wanting to be on the safe side, they checked into a Connecticut hospital, just to make sure everything was okay. But since checking in, the staff was hostile, regarding the couple as criminals and fugitives. Peter was accused of being an Islamic terrorist. He's a Christian, just to be clear. While the mother was accused of being a drug addict. Susie was tested to determine if she was in labor after 38 weeks of pregnancy. She reports, via Facebook, that she was made to undress in full view of interns, while also urinating in a cup, again in full view of the interns, for drug tests. They came back negative, by the way. After the tests, she moved to leave, but a nurse told her that they wanted her to stay, so they could check on her cervix to determine the baby's health. She agreed, but an IV drip was added and used to administer drugs. Susie was then told that she would be getting an immediate C-section. When she protested, she was told the police would arrest her and force her to have the C-section anyways. So far, the couple had been insulted, mocked, and humiliated, while Susie was drugged and tricked into having a serious surgery done to her body against her will. They hadn't even been in the hospital for an hour yet. Susie had previously wanted the baby to be delivered naturally, but this was denied. 3 days after the baby, Sophia, was successfully delivered, she was kidnapped by hospital staff. Both Peter and Susie were barred from seeing her, under the justification that they were both criminals, even though no criminal charges have been filed, let alone evidence provided. Susie was also denied medication for her high blood pressure and diabetes. It was eventually given, however reluctantly, as an obvious power play of life and death over another person whose only crime was not to leave the hospital when she had the chance.
A yet unnamed neonatologist then informed the couple that he knew they didn't care for Sophia because if they did, then they would be visiting Sophia more often. When informed that it was the hospital preventing the parents from seeing Sophia, and that this isn't how logic works, since the burden of proof is not on the parents to justify any inaction, said neonatologist proved to be a complete Ramsay Bolton-esque sadist and psychopath, simply replying that he didn't care, even going as far as to baselessly accuse the parents of kidnapping their other two children. This, by the way, was not just an attempt to gaslight and deflect some clearly distraught and indignant victims. This was actually used on record as a justification for the Connecticut Department of Children and Families, or the DCF, to take custody of Sophia and put her into the foster care system. To date, Susie and Peter Said have been charged with and convicted of 0 crimes. Clearly, this is all just hearsay and speculation, perhaps maybe even some dishonest framing on the parts of the parents. There's no way this actually... Oh wait, there's a fucking video of it taken by the husband!
I mean, I can tell you if I left today, because obviously no one's being discharged today, but if it comes to be that you're discharged Sunday or Monday and we still have no answers to anything, the hospital's not going to allow the baby to be discharged, and we're going to get called again.
The Said family has a court date scheduled for November of 2019, where the DCF is seeking to formally terminate the parents' parental rights over Sophia. Their current level of parental rights, quote-unquote, is afforded to them through the DCF's generosity, allowing the family a 2-hour visit every week, where they must take a 20-hour drive away from Tennessee to complete.
A pregnant mother wanted to make sure her baby was okay, so she went to a hospital. Within an hour, she was mocked, humiliated, drugged, and tricked into having surgery. Her newborn was then kidnapped by the state of Connecticut while the mother was withheld medication and might have died. The family is barred from seeing their baby, except under heavily supervised circumstances. The justification given by both the hospital and the state is based on transparently false accusations, and that's when they even decide to provide a justification for their actions. Throughout this entire case, including in the aforementioned video taken by the husband, the hospital employees and state workers in many cases refused to provide explanations for why they claim to be justified in doing this. If your stomach is turning after listening to all this, if you've paused or are tempted to pause this video just to give yourself some time to process what was just explained to you, then good. That means you have a soul.
You might be thinking, probably more so vainly hoping at this point, that we're done, that this isn't going to get any more depraved and reprehensible. Oh, my friend, I honestly wish it was, and you've obviously forgotten that this is the state we're talking about, an organization which fundamentally functions as an existential evil, plague on mankind, and generally just being the most awful thing ever, and which there is absolutely no low that it won't sink to secure its claim to power over society and control the people it claims to rule over. Baby Sophia, so far, while in state custody, has been sent to a daycare center at 8 weeks old. Now, anyone with a basic understanding of biology understands that you shouldn't let children who are that young around many other people, because when a baby is that young, they don't have a very strong immune system and are prone to catching some pretty nasty diseases that could kill without the people being around them even knowing that they're carrying the germs. The mother, Susie, knew this and pleaded with the foster parents and the state not to send Sophia to the daycare for this very reason. But they did anyway, and sure enough, Sophia developed a case of RSV, essentially the common cold, but this could be fatal for infants. Sophia had to be rushed to the hospital and almost died. What was the foster parents' excuse? They sent Sophia to a daycare despite Susie's pleading and knowing the danger because, and I quote, "it was convenient for them." I fucking shit you not. Jesus fucking Christ, if this story were presented to me without the context of all the specific names of the people and organizations involved, I'd assume that this was part of some United Nations presentation on human rights atrocities committed inside North Korean gulags, or testimony from a former prisoner at Auschwitz during the Nuremberg trials. But no, this is something which happened right here, in a supposedly free land, not even a year ago. And do you really want to know the worst part, aside from the fact that what's already been presented isn't the worst part? I don't think you do, but we're gonna tell you anyway. This is just the entrance to a very dark, disturbing, and deep rabbit hole. Not only is the US government committing atrocities against people in the US like this, but it is doing so on a systematic basis.
In retaliation for going public with this story on May 2019, Connecticut DCF got a judge to order both parents undergo a 6-hour psychological evaluation. The absurdity of a court compelling a person to do anything should be clear, especially since there's no semblance of due process. But secondly, we've already seen trained medical professionals, social workers, government bureaucrats, and many others bend over backwards to obstruct and restrict the parent's right to see their baby. The mother, Susie, is absolutely right to be skeptical that this doctor is not just going to label the parents as insane to justify a court affirming the DCF's rapacious lust for removing the parental rights of this completely innocent family. They're likely another victim of predictive analytics, a new tool being used by child protective service agencies around the world to predict whether or not children will be abused by a family. Now, being able to predict when a family is going to be abusive can be helpful. An honest doctor with the best intentions would want to intervene and teach parents who might not know any better about peaceful parenting methods. The trouble is that predictive algorithms are broken. In New Zealand, a predictive algorithm regarded as a success made the wrong prediction over half the time. In Los Angeles, a hugely successful predictive algorithm gave false positives of future child abuse 95% of the time. Social workers will go to court, citing the possibility of future abuse as the justification for children to be separated from their parents, despite having zero evidence of past abuse. These algorithms are simply another tool with which the state can pretend to be justified in breaking apart families. In the context of the SODs, we can see this in action, where hostile hospital staff are constantly bombarding the parents with charges of negligent or criminal behavior. It's clear the government and the state is going out of their way to tear kids from their families. They will even go to extreme lengths to do so, falsifying drug tests to give a result that favors parental separation, or social workers giving false testimonies in court to force a separation. Repeatedly. Things have gotten so bad that the state of Texas has actually proposed a bill to make it illegal for social workers to do just that. Because apparently, lying to a judge to tear apart families is already perfectly legal. Why wouldn't the state get a corrupt psychiatrist to rubber stamp their malicious intent? But here's a question that's not being asked. Why? What purpose does it serve for the government to kidnap children? Even worse, why would hospital staff actively cooperate? This is an absolute evil. But people aren't motivated by malevolence. What do they hope to gain from doing any of this?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it actually took me quite a long time to even write this down, because the information I'm about to present is so fucking sick and disgusting that I actually had a difficult time trying to even articulate this. I mean, I'm sure you all understand by now, even if you aren't overwhelmed with a powerful sense of existential dread, that this is war crime territory stuff we're talking about here. And if any other government were doing this and it were happening in any other country, the United States government would be presenting this as a justification to overthrow the regime of the said government in question. But of course, this doesn't happen because the US government has more resources than every other on Earth, mainly because it has control over the international markets, and therefore the availability of resources to other countries through bodies such as the IMF, OPEC, or the World Bank. Now, given that the US government obviously has to spend so much in order to sustain its ability to control and steal resources from people who produce them with relative efficiency, the US government, like any other government, has to do anything it can to collect revenue. But unlike most other governments, which largely stick to plundering through regulations and taxes on trade within the legal markets, because the US government has to spend so much, if it were to simply raise the tax rates and restrict trade every time it had to obtain more resources to sustain itself, it would kill the economy. Producers would stop profiting from trading within the legal markets and would either stop trading altogether or would start trading under the table. And now that things like cryptocurrency exist and innovations such as CRISPR, 3D printing, or micro CC machines, it's already damn near less profitable to trade in the legal markets simply because of transaction fees through banks, inflation, along with all the regulation and taxes which already exist to trade in the legal markets. And recently, members of the militia group in the United States, known as the Minutemen, stopped a Jeep trying to cross the US-Mexico border, only to find that the Jeep was being driven by two CIA agents attempting to smuggle nearly 600 kilos of cocaine into the US. Now, why, you may be asking, am I even mentioning this? Then putting together the pieces and picking your jaw up off the floor once you realize that yes, I am going exactly where you think I am going, and I hate that this is a thing just as much as you do. So the US government, or any other government which is in a similar predicament, begins manufacturing black markets. What I mean by this is that they put heavy legal restrictions on or outright outlaw certain high-demand commodities, both to create black markets and make those commodities more valuable. The US government, through the CIA, usually will then establish a cartel to create an identical monopoly on security and arbitration for that specific industry, just like the government has on the white market and legal transactions occurring with those commodities. These cartels will then control the distribution of most of the world's supply of these commodities with the backing of the CIA. The CIA then takes the profit they've made from these cartels and uses them to fund the US government, typically, as exposed in the Panama Papers, doing this in order to fund off-the-record military expenses and experiments for DARPA and the Pentagon. The US government does this mainly with black market drugs. In fact, it's openly on record that the Sinaloa and Los Zetas Mexican drug cartels were directly created by the CIA. According to the 1974 Mondale Act, states receive billions of dollars every single year in funding from the federal government for organizations associated with child protective services, such as psychologists, residential facilities, foster parents, adoptive parents, the MSPCC, the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program, the YMCA, etc. And the government gives what it refers to as technical assistance to these specific groups. What is that, you might be asking? Well, and you can't even make this up, the federal government sets a goal for the amount of children to be taken into state custody by CPS and placed into foster care, and then increases the amount of money that it gives to CPS, and CPS then distributes that money to the state governments in question. And we're not even talking small amounts of money either. It's estimated that each child kidnapped brings in about $1 million of revenue for each state that receives increased funding through CPS from the federal government as a result of hitting one of these quotas. Because of this, in many cases, the state literally doesn't even give a reason for kidnapping children. Not that there is ever a valid reason, but in many cases, CPS or CPS-affiliated organizations literally just say that the child is adoptable on their public court case, such as the Arizona Department of Child Safety's justification for why it took a 2-year-old girl whose identity is unknown because the parents kept it off the public record in this case. The state also has absolute dominion of what happens to the children that it kidnaps at the direct expense of the parent, which on top of being another way of directly incentivizing the state to kidnap children, it creates direct incentives for the state to use these children as a tool to generate revenue from some of their other lucrative cartels, like the drug industry, where the American Psychiatric Association invents neurological disorders such as oppositional defiance disorder, which psychologists even admit that there's no foundation to classify this as a mental disorder, since there's no distinction in the neurological functioning of a brain belonging to someone who supposedly has ODD with someone who doesn't, which can then be used as a justification to put these children, who the state kidnaps and deems to be defiant, on extremely expensive psychoactive medication, and force the parents to pay thousands of dollars a week so that the government can leave their children brain damaged for the rest of their lives, and also generate some fat chunks of cash for Big Pharma. Remember baby Sophia's foster parents? How they sent Sophia to daycare even though Sophia's mother pleaded for them not to because she understood basic biology? That probably was on purpose. So if that wasn't stomach-churningly awful enough, it turns out that another apparently very lucrative way to exploit children for money that the state's discovered is to start sex trafficking rings and sell the kids that they've kidnapped into child sex slavery. Remember that girl that I mentioned earlier, briefly, whom was simply referred to as a Jane Doe in the record, who was kidnapped and taken into state custody by the Arizona Department of Child Safety? She was given over by CPS to the custody of a registered sex offender that Child Protective Services knew and acknowledged was a sex offender on record. She was then raped, killed, and had 80% of her corpse burned by the person that CPS gave custody of her to. With this now taken into consideration, CPS referring to children as simply being adoptable for the reason as to why they kidnap some of them now carries some incredibly sinister implications. And this is hands down one of the most absolutely fucking disgusting and perverted things I've ever heard. But as you may have guessed, this is hardly an isolated example. According to the FBI's statistics, 18,000 children every year go quote-unquote missing from the custody of Child Protective Services, and by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's own figures in 2017, out of the 25,000 kids who were reported missing as runaways, 1 in 7 of them were part of a child sex trafficking ring, and out of that roughly 3,500 kids, 88% of them were legally in the custody of Child Protective Services. This, by the way, if you weren't already able to make the inference, is the main reason why there are so many child sex trafficking rings closely affiliated with government agencies and organizations of major political influence within the United States, and is consequently why mainstream media outlets tend to give virtually no coverage to any of these child sex trafficking rings when uncovered, regardless of how monumental the scale of the operation was, or perhaps because of how influential the operation was. Sacha Baron Cohen, for example, when shooting for his Netflix series Who is America in December of 2018 in a Las Vegas hotel for a segment on the Harvey Weinstein controversy, Cohen, playing one of his characters, Geo, initially looking to invoke a reaction out of a concierge for entertainment value, as is typical for skits on this show, told the concierge that he'd molested and an 8-year-old boy and was looking to do the same for more children. The concierge then told Cohen that he could, quote, put him into connection with contacts who could give him what he was looking for, and a lawyer to shut up the kid who Cohen's character claims to have molested. Cohen then reported this to the FBI, and even though there is publicly available video evidence of it, the FBI declined to even launch an investigation. This story was mentioned on a couple of smaller second-tier online publications owned by bigger mainstream media outlets shortly after it happened, and then it was never mentioned again.
I don't want to say it, but I have to. The reason that Sophie was stolen from her mother 3 days after her birth and put at huge risk of becoming a child sex slave was because the state of Connecticut wanted another 1 million chicken tendies from the federal government, and those doctors, nurses, bureaucrats, and social workers all wanted that bonus they get in their paychecks from kidnapping. They aren't acting out of malice. The state of Connecticut, as of 2015, held $20 billion in unfunded liabilities, owing the average resident $556,000 in pensions. So of course they looked for whatever revenue streams they had to make up for that shortfall. This pattern is repeated in states all across the country. States get to double dip, collecting money from federal grants and collecting adoption fees from child sex traffickers. Pharmaceuticals get kickbacks from selling brain-melting drugs to corrupt doctors who write prescriptions for kids with mental illnesses that don't actually exist. The federal government gets their back scratched too, as federal law enforcement agencies like the FBI get to ask for bigger budgets to fight yet another problem the very same federal government created. It's all one big money-making scheme. Make no mistake. The government is sponsoring and subsidizing child sex trafficking with your stolen money, and no child is too young to be considered adoptable. As such, the state and its minions will lie, cheat, steal, and do whatever it is that they have to get that money. Even develop algorithms that result in false positives of future child abuse 95% of the time, just to create a flimsy justification for state-mandated kidnapping. When the Connecticut hospital told Susie Sod she'd be arrested by police, they weren't lying. Your well-being, or that of your child's, be damned. As far as they're concerned, your child is just a bonus on their paycheck. It's for their own good, you see. Any organization that facilitates this abortion of justice shouldn't exist. It's wrong. It's a crime against humanity. The state is at war with humanity, and the extent of their cruelty cannot be overstated. I knew in 2018, during the controversy involving the British government attempting to murder Alfie Evans, that although that was the worst example of state malice, that it wouldn't be the worst for all time. As a political observer for 10 years, my experience can be summed up as an endless procession of injustices by the state, each one worse than the last. The case of the Sod family is the worst example of statist injustice I have ever seen. Even more so because it's just the tip of the iceberg. These are just the stories we hear about from the ones courageous enough to step forward and give their side of the story, or even to defy the gag orders the state judges like to slap on these families. But in the back of my mind, I know full well they'll come up with some new horror show that makes the Sod's family case, where their newborn daughter was ripped from their mother, nearly killed, and will be sold as a sex slave, look tame by comparison. The Sod family's case is the true face of the state, and if we are to free mankind from this abomination, we need to first recognize it for what it is. The truth will set us free. And if you've listened to this video up to this point and still think that we need a government, fuck you. If you want to help the Saad family, there's a link to a GoFundMe page for their legal expenses. As I'm sure you're aware, the state is going to bleed them dry before this is over, so every little bit helps. And even if you can't, well, spread the story. And especially spread this video around. It's not a happy topic at all, but it's important. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe to me, Filthy Heretic. Otherwise, have a good day and I'll see you later.